welcome to the July 2022 Q&A on moving to France. I'm Allison Grant Lounes. I am the author of Foolproof French Visas, the four editions thereof. I'm the admin of the almost 16,000 member Facebook group Americans in France, and I own a relocation agency called Franceformation, where we help people to move to France, get the right visas, and create their dream lives. I'm here today answering all of your questions about moving. This Q&A is for everybody who is interested in moving to France, no matter where you are in the process. It is free to attend and to submit your questions. I also offer paid consultations. I offer free short calls, first with my team to sort of talk about your plans and goals for moving to France and when you sort of expect to do that. And then once you are ready to get started, you have a call with me to talk about what we can support you with, what package suits your needs best, if we're a good fit to work together, and packages and rates and everything like that. So do feel free to reach out. I will put a link in the comments, probably at several points throughout the call, where you can submit a request to be contacted by our team. We now have former clients who are going to be reaching out and talking to anybody who is interested in working with us. I can no longer handle doing all of those calls by myself, especially not when I want to also do the parts of my job that actually get people to France. So we have been expanding our team a little bit, and that's going to be the procedure from here on out. Without further ado, I'm going to open up the questions that have been pre-submitted. Again, you are welcome to submit your questions either in the chat box or in the Q&A box, and I will read them and answer them. Okay, so the first question is from Yasmin. I am a US citizen and resident. My goal is to retire in France. I plan on coming initially on a VLS-TS, a visa long séjour, titre de séjour. I also am waiting for my German citizenship by descent, hopefully by the year end. People on the VLS visa say they got in the French healthcare system after 3 months residency. I've been told that EU citizens would not be covered in France unless they are covered in Germany. I will not be covered in Germany, well, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So a lot of times what we recommend, because we have a lot of clients who start going through the process of getting an EU citizenship at the point in time in which they decide they want to move to France. Now, the thing about all of these EU countries that allow you to get citizenship by descent is that it can take quite a long time. So we actually have one such client who is on here today. I see her on here, who started the process like way before COVID, and it has been delayed and delayed and delayed because of COVID and because some countries have just slow bureaucracy, and it's a long process. So a lot of times in those situations, what we advise our clients to do is to do what you suggest, is relocating to France on a visitor visa or another type of visa and establishing residency using your US passport and a visa in your US passport. And then at the point in time at which you get your EU citizenship, you will already be established in the French system, and you can just sort of let your titre de séjour expire and start using your EU passport as proof of ID. So if you do that, if you come to France on a visitor visa and meet the requirements for that, and then register for the French healthcare system after 3 months of residency on your visa, et cetera, then you don't have to wait for the German citizenship to be finalized before you can actually move. That is probably one of the better options for you. We also, for those who are in a similar situation who are moving, we also have clients who, one of them, it started the process of getting, I want to say Italian citizenship, but they had just started the process when they reached out about moving to France. They are younger than retirement age. They plan on being self-employed and having a company in France. And so I told them, well, you could come on a visitor visa, but you would have to not work until you had the EU citizenship and the ability to register your company without without applying for one of those visas. So you can also just apply for, they ended up applying for a talent passport visa so that they were able to reduce the wait time. And we are still waiting for that to be processed right now. But basically, like they could have waited, but it would have been about 2 years or so before that citizenship came through. In the meantime, they wouldn't have been able to work because they would have been on a visitor visa. So I suggested the alternative of the talent passport. All right, next question. Margaret, in the recent edition of your book, you mentioned changes to the Profession Libérale visa, specifically that the French embassy wants applicants to have a source of French income. Does this mean we need to have French clients before applying, or does having identifiable leads or potential clients suffice? I'm planning on converting my current position in content management editorial strategy into a business, so we'll have solid income for an American source. Yeah, so to answer your question, yes, obviously having French clients or European clients is stronger, but they will accept if you outline places where you're going to get leads, if you have recommendations from people that you know who are willing to hire you or introduce you to people who might be willing to hire you, or places where you can do networking or things like that. I like to incorporate a little bit of a reason, like why are your clients in France going to be benefiting from you having this American perspective, or like having worked with other clients that you previously worked with in that particular industry, or some kind of link that how it benefits your clients for you to be in France, basically, or how it benefits France to have you doing this particular service or selling this particular product in France. I'm going to be in France this winter on a tourist visa. I assume by tourist visa, you mean that you will be traveling on your passport and not have a visa. Is it possible to apply for a Profession Libérale auto-entrepreneur visa while in France? No. Do I need to return to the US for the appointment? You always need to apply for a visa in a country where you have permanent residency or citizenship. So if you, for example, have a visa or carte de séjour or whatever the equivalent is to live in like Portugal, and you want to move from Portugal to France as an American citizen, you can apply. I think Portugal is covered by the French embassy in Madrid. So you can apply in Madrid to move to France. But if you are just in Europe as a tourist with no visa, then you need to return to a country where you have long-term residency or citizenship in order to apply. Kimberly, what is the process of obtaining psychiatric medications once living in France? So you will have to, I always recommend bringing as much as possible of whatever medication you're on, and bringing a copy of your prescription and a copy of the insert for the medication so that you can bring it to the doctor and you can see like what the active drugs are. Now, in the most recent podcast episode I recorded, I talk about, let me see if I can remember the acronym off the top of my head. It's like the Agence de Sécurité of, like, there's the medical security agency in France, and I forget the acronym off the top of my head, but I did put it in the most recent podcast notes. And this agency, you can look up what medications you're taking to see if they're available in France and if the formula is any different. So I would recommend you do that. There are certain things that are not prescribed in the same way in France as they are in the US. Common examples are a lot of ADHD medications that are stimulants are not prescribed as much in France. The other thing to be aware of is something like Wellbutrin is a very common antidepressant or anti-anxiety medication in the US, and in France it's used for people who want to stop smoking. And so there is like an additional ingredient in the French version that has to do with either nicotine or something related to the smoking addiction piece, and it can make people like jittery, or you can have a reaction to whatever that additional ingredient is. So you do want to make sure that the formula is similar if you're on one of those things. Now you can contact or try to have an appointment with a doctor before you even get to France and see if the medication is available, and if not, what you can do to try to find it, or if there's something that is largely equivalent. But that's one of the things on my checklist that you want to definitely do before you actually move, is making sure you can get any important medication. Other than that, if it's available, just take your prescription, take your take the insert to a doctor when you arrive within a couple of weeks, and you should be able to get a French prescription. You might have to pay out of pocket for the first time or two, but it's not going to be anywhere near as expensive what it would regularly cost in the US. I'm hearing that instead of having to go to your prefecture, everything is online now. Is that the case? No, everything is not online. Many things are online, but definitely not everything. You don't mention what you said. You are interested in entrepreneur visas or retirement visas. So if you're on a visitor visa, then the renewals are now online, and you just have to go and pick up the card when it is ready. For entrepreneurship visas, for profession libérale, you still have to go in person for libérale. For passeport talent, you submit the request for the carte de séjour online, and then you just have to go pick it up, and then you renew online as well. Okay, Ellen, where can I find free French classes to improve my rudimentary skill? Free, I'm not sure. You would have to take a French test at OFI and qualify for free lessons under their scheme. Now, if you want very low cost French lessons, you can contact your town hall, your mairie, and see if they offer French lessons either through the town hall itself or through a neighboring commune. And you can see if one of their associations, they have associations that are offering French classes and things like that. I don't think that they would necessarily be free, but they can be very low cost. I have to report to my prefecture within 2 months if my visa is approved. Where do I go? I don't know what you have to validate your visa on. So there's 2 different procedures depending on what kind of visa you have. If your visa is approved, if you have a visitor visa or a student visa or a profession libérale visa or a family visa or anything that's not a passeport talent, basically, you submit a validation online through OFI, and then they will invite you to a medical visit and a validation appointment within, well, anywhere between 6 weeks to 6 months. It really depends on the department and the timing of when you submit it. And you will have to go where they tell you on the date that they tell you, and that's going to vary based on your department. OFI is regional, so they're about, I don't know, they're all listed in the appendix of foolproof French visas, which OFI office covers which departments, but there's only about maybe 13 of them, 15 of them max, that cover multiple departments instead of one per department like the prefectures. All right, question in the comments: do talent passport visas still expire after 4 years? And if so, are they renewable in France? Can you talk more about how hard those are to renew? There are many different types of talent passport visas. So it depends on what type you mean. There's salaried and carte bleue européenne talent passports. There's the entrepreneur. There's the profession artistique. There's the famous person visas. Those I think are the main. Then there's other salaried worker ones, like young innovative companies and workers and things like that. It depends on which talent passport category, how long they are going to give you. They can give you up to 4 years. They don't always give you 4 years. We have some entrepreneur clients who have gotten 4 years. We have others who have gotten 2 years. So it really depends. It really depends on who's looking at your application and what kind of mood they're in on that day. They are renewable in France. They are renewable online. They want to see certain benchmarks for different things depending on the visa type. So if you want to renew a salaried talent passport, you need to be in the same job at least the same level of pay, or at least the same level of responsibility. If you are an entrepreneur, they want to see that your business is paying you a salary and or making a profit. If you're hiring people, even better. So there are different criteria that they're going to be looking at to make sure that you are successful before they make a decision on that. Another question in the chat from Margot: how easy and what are the requirements to get the visa vie privée familiale after a pax with a French citizen? I read that it was needed to show proof of living together for a year, but is that all? Living together and being paxed for a year. That is an element of appreciation in your application, but is not the only factor. So they're going to look at things like what are they doing with their career? Like, were they on an expiring visa and getting paxed because they couldn't renew their visa type? Did they get paxed to avoid having to continue their studies, or because they couldn't get sponsored for a job after their recherche d'emploi, création d'entreprise visa, things like that. They're looking at, is it a credible relationship and not just a convenience for the visa type of thing. Michael, if I have French citizenship, but my wife doesn't, what visa does she require? So she will have to apply for a vie privée et familiale visa. You don't say where you got married. If you got married in France, then you will get the livret de famille and the marriage certificate from the town hall where you get married. If you get married outside of France, then you need to register the marriage with the local French consulate in the place where you get married. They have to send everything to Nantes, the Service d'État Civil in Nantes, and Nantes will register the marriage and provide you with basically a French version of a marriage certificate. Now, once they do that, you can use that document and the livret de famille from the consulate to get the vie privée visa. And that's something that we can help with, either the registering of the marriage, if you haven't done that yet, to the actual visa application itself. I would not get it until the consulate asks you for it. I would submit your visa application without it, and if the consulate wants it, they will email you for it, and it is very easy and straightforward to sign up online the same day that they ask, and to send it right back to them. Because there's unfortunately no rhyme or reason. They don't have separate lists on the France Visa's website for over and under 28. Okay, is it possible to start your own business, freelance writing, web copy, etc. if you're on a vie privée familiale visa due to spouse having a talent passport? Yes, you can register as self-employed. I'm not 100% sure you're able to register a company on that visa type, but you can definitely be profession libérale and register as being auto-entrepreneur. In fact, Lauren, who is on my team, is in that situation. She followed her husband as a trailing spouse, and she's auto-entrepreneur, and she works for me. Okay, Rumiana, I hope I'm saying your name right. How long after the signature of a compromis de vente to moving into my new apartment? So that is very much going to depend on your notaire. At least 3 months. We have videos and guides on the process in Fast Track to France, our online program to help you get ready for relocating to France and to navigate the 9 areas of transformation. That's number 3. Yeah, if you sign the compromis de vente on July 13th, you have a 10-day retraction period, which means that if you send a registered letter within 10 days, you can change your mind basically and get all your money back. You want to make sure that the compromis de vente has any clause suspensive in there, so meaning that there are certain criteria that have to be met for the sale to go through. So one of those could be like you getting a mortgage at a certain amount at a certain rate. Criteria could be getting authorization to do such and such from the mairie. It could be the sale of your current property. You have to sell your current property in order to buy the new property, and it has to get sold within a certain amount of time. So all of those things, you want to make sure they're in the compromis de vente before you sign it, if any part of your purchase is conditional on something else happening. Because once that 10-day retraction period is gone, you are only able to pull out of the purchase for a certain number of things that are clearly outlined in the compromis de vente. Now, how quickly things move, it's going to be a minimum of 3 months, because for one thing, there are certain administrative procedures that have specific timelines that have to be respected. So for example, the mairie and certain town offices have like the right of first refusal to purchase the property. So if for any reason they want to purchase it, or they have plans for it or something, then you want to make sure that, or they have to make sure that they're not going to preempt your purchase and buy it themselves. And they have a certain amount of time to decide whether or not they want to do that. Then there are a couple of other things, and it's also just the time for the notaire to drop the paperwork. We're headed into August. All notaires probably are going to be on vacation for most, if not all, of the month of August. So I would expect 3 months at a minimum, but it's really going to depend on your notaire. Jamie, for a profession libérale visa, my wife and I are starting an online business, a general partnership, in order to secure our visas. What type of visa will my 14-year-old son need, and how do we apply for it? So your minor son will be a dependent on your visas, and he will get a document called a DCEM, a Document de Statut Étranger Mineur, once he is already in France. So in order to get his visa, we'll need to show that he's going to be enrolled in school. Some consulates have been asking, sometimes the consulate has been asking for a health insurance policy for children, even when the parents aren't necessarily required to provide it. But yeah, that's not necessarily going to be a problem. Penelope, we're having trouble finding an Airbnb in Palaiseau for our expected arrival in October. Do we have to be in the exact prefecture for arrival, or can we stay in another town close by until we secure a 1-year lease in the town? Yes, you can stay temporarily like in Paris and then find permanent housing in Palaiseau or something similar. You don't have to be in the exact town, but I love to hammer this point home. I do love people to have a permanent address before we do the OFI validation and register your auto entrepreneur activities. I would really love for you to find something long-term and stable within a couple weeks, 4 to 6 weeks of arriving. Do we need to leave a US bank account open if my husband is receiving direct deposit through Social Security? Not necessarily. Social Security will direct deposit into a foreign bank account. You can also, like the State Department has a credit union, and Americans abroad, I think, can access it. I'm not sure of the details for that, but it's possible. But you can keep a US bank account open. It helps to have an address of a family member that you can use for that purpose. And then if your husband has Social Security and it ends up being taxable and things like that, then it's probably a good idea to have a US bank account. All right, Leslie, if I reside in France, should I base my business in France or the USA if my business is all virtual? France. If you live in France, you live and work in France. I've just become aware that with many organizations, you are not allowed to use a virtual mailbox as your business location. Yeah, so you need to be registered in France. You need to pay social taxes on your income and income taxes on your income to France first, and have a SIRET number and have insurance in France and have an address in France and all of that stuff. It doesn't matter where your clients are. What matters is where you are while you're doing the work. Margot, is it easy to come to France on a long stay tourism visa? I assume you mean a visitor visa, and then switch to a student visa. My boyfriend wants to come in December and to look for schools. I would only need the student visa to start in September, but wants to stay in France from December to September. It's complicated. I would say that's not a good idea. There are certain visa types that you can't switch back and forth between. Like you can't switch from a work visa to a student visa. I'm not sure. I've never tried to switch somebody from a visitor visa to a student visa. I wouldn't say it's impossible, but because those two processes are definitely online now, I wouldn't want to try it. I would say the better bet, depending on how his French is to enroll in a French program from December to September with the goal of, I'm planning on applying to these graduate programs in France that start in September, and I want to make sure that my written and oral French is as good as possible before starting the program. That would be my recommendation, because then you're on a student visa the whole time. Roxanne, I'm getting ready to put an offer on an existing gîte complex that has a record of meeting the 23,000 euros of income per year that will be required. So just so you know, there's more to the question, but I'm going to make a note right here. If you are going to have rental income from short-term rentals, 23,000 euros is the magic number. Under 23,000 euros, it is considered non-professional income, and you do not have to have a business plan. You have to register the property, obviously, and pay income taxes on it, but it is not a business. Once you hit 23,000 euros, it is considered a business, and you need to have a business plan and a visa to be profession libérale and register to be auto entrepreneur and to declare it, or even potentially register a business type if you're going to exceed that even more and have a lot of expenses. I'm working on a business plan for a Jeep property right now, and it's super fun. I will be applying for the entrepreneur visa. We'll be working together to help in the visa process and business plan. I'm scared of purchasing the property, then not being able to get the required visa to start my path towards residency. I'll still have alimony income from the US, far more than minimum wage in France. In addition to the G income, I feel like I have a solid profile to submit for the visa. The purchase process will begin in August, but I don't plan to move until June 2023. But what happens if I don't get the visa? How likely is that such a scenario will result in me being granted an entrepreneurship visa? I'm not worried, especially if you already have an offer in on the property. If it has a solid business record, we can encourage the current owner to keep the bookings open so that the bookings will transfer to you on of the sale or transfer of the property. One thing I learned there's a woman named Valerie Aston, and she did a master class not too long ago that I attended about registering and running Jeep properties. Because like I said, I'm working on another business plan for one of these right now. And she talked about that she's where I learned the magic number of 23,000. And we talked about different things that we can include in Jeep business properties to make it very clear that it's going to be a business activity and not just like a nightly rental property that might not reach the 23,000 euro per year income threshold. So we can absolutely talk about and develop those opportunities when we have our calls. How long does it take to acquire an entrepreneur visa? If I start now and submit by September, do you think a June 2023 move date is viable? My son is currently 16, plans on making a permanent move to France when he's 18 and finish high school, but will be spending vacations in France with me starting summer 2023. Should I apply for his visa at the same time as mine, with him as my minor child, or wait till 2024 when he's ready for the permanent move, but an adult? Okay, so it would be much easier to move when he is still a minor and have him request a carte de séjour as a dependent family member when he turns 18. So if we can manage to do that, that would be great. Now, in terms of the entrepreneur visa, we have two options for you. One is the profession libérale visa, where the property is owned in your name and the business activity is primarily going to be rentals. We're not going to be deducting a lot of expenses, and it's going to be auto entrepreneur. And whatever services that you can provide along with the auto entrepreneur activity are going to be listed as additional activities under auto entrepreneur. The other option is to do the Passeport Talent Entrepreneur, which requires a 30,000 euro investment in starting a company and or 5 years of experience, professional experience. And it requires now submitting the business plan for pre-approval through a form submitted to the Ministry of the Economy. And they read your business plan and they evaluate it for viability. So if you have professional experience that we can frame in such a way that a Jeep business looks like the next logical progression, like let's say you have experience in, I don't know, customer service or hospitality or anything like that, marketing, even for commercializing your property, things like that, then talent passport would probably be a good idea because one, it separates out the property from your personal ownership, and two, like it enables you to deduct a lot of expenses. But it does have additional requirements like setting up a company and making this investment, which can then be used to pay for expenses related to the business. Now, if you're going the talent passport route, I would definitely recommend starting sooner rather than later. This Ministry of the Economy form took us by surprise in early May. It got put up after I had submitted 3 talent passport applications, and all of a sudden we had to do these 3 Ministry of the Economy form approvals, which had not existed before the applications were submitted. And it took about a month. It took about a month to get replies on all of the applications. We're still waiting on one of them. Once you get approval from them, the approval is valid for 1 calendar year. So we can absolutely do the business plan early, get the Ministry of the Economy form approved early, and then you can apply for your visa when you're ready. And now the visa application should take less time. So one of my clients, the approval came through, the consulate had already asked for the Ministry of the Economy form. And as soon as we got it and sent it back to them, their visa went out the next day. So there's not a lot of waiting time on their end, on the end of the consulate, now that all of the evaluation and approval is done through the Ministry of the Economy. So better to start on the early end if we're doing Passeport Talent Entrepreneur. If we're doing Profession Libérale right now, there's no reason to start way earlier, because you still submit that business plan directly to the consulate, and that is for the foreseeable future. I did mention in Foolproof French visas that there is a plan, I believe, to implement a similar process for the Profession Libérale visas, but for right now, that's not the case. All right, next one. Cameron, why is property in Provence so affordable compared to New York's? Is there a catch? I don't know. I haven't bought property in Provence or in New York. I've been thinking about this question actually the past couple of days. I've been in the US for about 10 days. And I think in the US we tend to have expensive basic necessities. Like food is pretty expensive, housing is pretty expensive, and we have relatively inexpensive consumer goods. Like you can go to the dollar store or Five Below or Target or whatever and get like the coolest stuff for very little money, but we have expensive healthcare, expensive housing, expensive food. And in France, I think it's kind of the opposite. Like we have relatively expensive consumer goods. I mean, yeah, consumer goods, but relatively affordable housing, food, medical care, etc. So that's sort of been, I haven't thought out any analysis beyond that. I don't know if that would necessarily pan out everywhere in France versus everywhere in the US, but those were kind of, I have been thinking about that over the past week. Can I work in my New York-based business remotely while in province on a visitor visa? No, you need to have a visa that enables you to work in France. If you are in France and you are working in France. And that means that you pay social taxes and income taxes on your earned income from your business first. Okay, those are all of the pre-submitted questions that I have. Okay, one more, Margaret. How hard is it to switch from an auto entrepreneur business to Profession Libérale as your business grows? If you are on a Profession Libérale visa, you can switch from auto entrepreneur to what's called a frais réel. And in fact, they do it for you automatically if you exceed the auto entrepreneur income limit of 72,600 euros for more than 2 years in a row. That being said, Profession Libérale is not necessarily going to be the best business structure for you once you get to above maybe 40,000 to 50,000 euros of income per year. There gets to be a point around the midpoint of the auto entrepreneur limit where you end up paying taxes on your expenses or paying taxes on your taxes, and it's not lucrative, or it's not the best financial option for you to stay on that business type as your business grows. And I would highly encourage anybody who has a relatively successful self-employment activity, and by relatively successful, I mean if you're making 3,000 or 4,000 euros per month regularly, you want to at least talk with an accountant or talk to me and do some financial projections and have this in mind going forward. Now, in our French Business Incubator program and in the financial projections we do for our clients, we have our spreadsheet will automatically calculate the differences in social charges and the difference in net in your pocket profit or income or whatever between auto entrepreneur and having a company. So it's very easy for us to use that template to make a comparison between what your result in your pocket would look like for auto entrepreneur versus what it would look like with a company setup. Now, of course, it's impossible to predict everything, but we can get a pretty good idea. Now, the convenient thing is that now Passport Talent Entrepreneur applications can be submitted online. So and Ministry of the Economy approval for commerçant visa. So if you're setting up a company, but you're not investing 35,000 euros or 35,000 euros, and you don't have 5 years of professional experience in that field, so you're not eligible for Passeport Talent, you can submit the application for approval for your new company type online and get the approval and then submit the carte de séjour application. So if you're in France for like 2 years and you're doing relatively well, you can change your status without too much difficulty just by submitting a request online now. Okay, if a spouse is applying for talent passport visa and I want to do profession libérale to have my own writing business, do I need to apply for this at the same time or just have the vie privée familiale and register as auto entrepreneur once in France? You can register for auto entrepreneur if you are on a Passeport Talent Famille Accompagnant visa. So if your husband, and you haven't said if it's going to be, Erin, is it going to be a Passeport Talent Entrepreneur visa or a different type of Passeport Talent visa? Okay, yeah, so you can absolutely, and actually I recommended this to other clients of mine. One of them was an artist and the other one wanted to start, she's a horticulturist and she wanted to do that as a business. And I said, well, the thing that makes the most sense is to request one profession artistique visa and have your wife sort of ride on your coattails and just register her business from the Passeport Talent Famille Accompagnant visa. So yeah, I think the same thing would make sense for you, is you come as an accompanying spouse. Now, the only sort of disadvantage to that is that with the talent passport visas, you have to resubmit basically all of the same documents online after you arrive in France. So instead of validating your visa through the OFI procedure, you're going to be validating your visa by uploading all of the same documents that you have already submitted to the consulate and putting them online and waiting for approval. And this can take a couple of weeks. And then once it gets approved, then you have a récépissé, and that will enable you to register your self-employment activity. Would they consider both incomes when evaluating, I guess, the visa or the visa renewal, or how does that work? They would evaluate your incomes individually. So they would look at the artist, the profession artistique visa, and see that he is meeting the minimum income requirements. It's about 1,100 euros per month to meet the requirements of the profession artistique visa, and he is the one who has to maintain the requirements for his visa. Now, you as a spouse can sort of do whatever you want. Like, you don't have to work. You can work, but you don't have to work. But they would not count your income, for example, in evaluating whether or not he meets the requirements for his visa. But they will look, if he's not quite meeting the requirements for his visa, like, they will look at total household available cash and assets to see if he's going to be able to pay his bills even without meeting the required minimum income for the visa. So they don't technically take your income into account, but they kind of sort of do. Okay. So yeah, Erin, when are you going to be looking at applying for those visas? June 2023. Okay, so yeah, so you want to apply for your visa sometime in March 2023, March or April. So you would probably want to get started by October, especially if we're going to be working together on those applications. And Roxanne, for you, if we're looking at, I know we're gonna be talking soon about this anyway, but yeah, I mean, for you, like, if you're sure about the property, like, let's get started when you sign the compromis, so we can work. We can get information, like, from the current owner on the situation of the business as it stands now, and make sure that you have everything that you're going to need. What is the minimum income requirement for a family of 3 with both parents on an auto entrepreneur visa? Jamie, are you going to be doing the same business? So one person by themselves, they're typically looking for about French minimum wage by the end of the first year. So French minimum wage as of May 1st is 1,645 euros per month in gross income. I like to set my clients up with their business plans to get around 2,500 to 3,000 of regular income per month. This is high for France. You would be surprised at how low salaries are. I like to target 2,500 to 3,000 a month. I would say for a family of three, that's about what you want to target. But as I mentioned, they will take cash assets into account a little bit to the extent where they know that if you're not able to get up to that minimum income level, but you do have cash to fall back on, then they're a little bit less concerned about whether or not you're going to be able to pay your bill. But yeah, you would be surprised at how many dual parent households in France, both parents are making minimum wage or only slightly more. I think there are lots of families that live on less than 3,000 euros per month, even families with multiple kids. So if you have any more questions, do you have a link for information about taxes on income over the 40K mark, as you mentioned? I assume you mean for where I said earlier that 40,000 euros is about the point where you want to consider whether auto entrepreneur is going to be the best setup for you going forward. I don't have any links to that. I have a template that I use for my clients to calculate their social charges and business expenses and like the net amount that ends up in their pocket, depending on what their business structure is and how much they're invoicing per month, and a lot of different factors based on their industry. That's something that I use with my clients. It's something that you get as part of the Complete French Business Incubator, which is our program to help you elaborate your business idea into something that can get you a profession libérale visa. So yeah, that's just kind of my analysis of the businesses that I've worked on over the years, is that around 40,000 euros, like you start being eligible to charge people VAT and to pay VAT, which means you generally have to get an accountant, and you have like slightly more significant obligations in terms of being a business owner, even of a small freelancing business. And so that's the point at which you really want to look at, are you paying more taxes as auto entrepreneur than you would be if you had some different type of structure. Okay, I've never received my deed for my apartment, and my notaire blames it on being slow due to COVID. Where can I check for a copy? Contact the town hall, contact the mairie to see if they have a copy, or you can point you to where to get a copy. But it does take a very long time for the final deed to be processed. So 2 years does seem excessive, but I don't know. Maybe it's not. All right, so thanks everybody for coming. I'm putting a link in the chat to request a callback from a member of my team. So as I mentioned, what we're doing now is you can request a call, and Melissa on my team is going to call back everybody who makes a request and just chat with you a little bit about your plans, your timeline, and things like that. And then depending on what you talk about, she'll make a recommendation. So sometimes if you're really early in the process, she'll recommend scheduling a full consultation with me so we can just talk through all of your questions. And that's going to be a paid situation. Now, once you're ready to get started, then we can absolutely schedule a brief free chat with me. And that's going to be to talk about getting started, make sure we're a good fit to work together. It's going to be a little bit less about answering your questions and more about like what package is a good fit for you, what type of support you're looking for, and what our onboarding procedures look like. Yeah, Erin, I will look forward to seeing you. I just realized if you are making a visa appointment this summer, you want to hop on that really fast. I think they opened up visa appointments last week for August, like late July and August. And there are very few appointments that are not for students. Yeah, let's if you're planning on making an appointment, do it now. I have to go and make some appointments today for some of my clients that once we figure out where they're going to be having their appointments. But yeah, and then there's a couple of you that we'll be talking in the fall. So this was the last Q&A for the 2021-2022 season. I'm taking August off. Yeah, Erin, we can decide on Friday. That's fine. I'm taking August off from doing the Q&As, but we will be back in September. So it'll very likely be the first Monday of the month at 7 p.m. France time. And I will send out an email, and I'll post an event on Facebook and all of that. So do feel free to stay on the mailing list, sign up for the next event. I hope to see you in September. And meanwhile, enjoy your vacation. All right, take care, everybody. Have a good summer.